Okay, looks like we are ready to get going, sir. Chair Delane, we have a quorum present, and I think we're ready to go ahead and kick off if you are.
Great. Want to welcome everyone to the Washington County Coordinating Committee's May 16th, 2020 meeting. This is being done via Zoom. Folks have a chance to reach out and touch us if they have questions or comments. There's also a call-in number listed on the website. So if you don't, I don't know how you'd know me if you don't have internet. Jeff Delane, Mayor Cornelius, Acting Chair of Washington County Coordinating Committee. Stephen, do we have any visitor comments?
We didn't have anyone who signed up in advance or submitted written comments, but if we want to give folks an opportunity to raise their hands, we can see if there's anyone in the audience who would like to say anything.
I'm not seeing anything pop up.
I do want to ask just really quickly, I see Mayor Calloway in the attendees, but we anticipated having Councilor Van Beveren.
I think Mayor Calloway has to step out.
There you are. Sorry, I didn't see a Councilor Van Beveren. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think that got us through visitors' comments, introductions, and roll call. I'd like to welcome longtime acquaintance, our Councilor Rick Van Beveren. He's taking over for Councilor Pace as our alternate rep when Mayor Calloway can't be here. Rick, good to see you. Do we have anybody else new or substituting this afternoon?
We have Council President Ackervala from Wilsonville sitting in for Mayor Fitzgerald.
I saw her waving. I was wondering. Hi, welcome. Anyone else?
I
Not
believe
seeing
that's
so.
it.
Stephen, you said we've got a quorum. Do you need to take roll call?
Why don't we do that, just for the record? And I'll just go in alphabetical order by city. City of Banks, Mayor Jones.
Here.
Thank you. City of Beaverton, Mayor Beatty.
Here.
Thank you. City of Cornelius, Mayor Delane. Thank you. City of Durham, Mayor Sherwood.
Present.
Thank you. City of Forest Grove, Mayor Truax.
Pete, this is the part where you talk.
It's, I thought I said here.
Sorry, we didn't
hear
get you.
Pete. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's see, Hillsborough, we have Councilor Van Beveren.
Here.
Thank you. King City, Mayor Fender. I don't know if she's been joined us yet. Okay. City of North Plains, Mayor Linehan.
Here.
Thank you. City of Sherwood, do we have Mayor Mays? Do not. Teresa, you might check to see if we have Councilor Rosner in our attendees. We'll come back. Mayor Snyder for Tigard.
Here.
Thank you. Tualatin, Mayor Bubenik.
Present.
Thank you. City of Wilsonville, we have Council President Ackervala.
Here.
Thank you. Washington County Commissioner Fye.
I'm here, Stephen, and I should be on camera pretty soon.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome. For Metro, do we have Councilor Rosenthal with us or Councilor Gonzalez? Okay. And for ODOT, I see Matt Freitag.
Hi there.
Welcome, Matt. And for Trimet, I think we have Tara O'Brien with us. Is that correct?
Yes. Here.
Thank you, Tara. Okay, so just going back very quickly, let's see. So we'll be on the lookout for Mayor Fender and perhaps Councilor Rosenthal or Councilor Gonzalez for Metro.
Okay. I think you had a mention here that we've got some new support staff for us.
We do. Maybe Teresa Gartner, do you want to turn your camera on for just a sec and introduce yourself? She's a new senior administrative assistant in our office, and she's going to be taking on Whitney's role as our liaison to WCCC. So you'll be seeing more emails from Teresa here and with meeting prep and agenda info.
Well, welcome aboard.
There's Teresa.
I don't think I saw her pop up.
Oh,
Is she there
Okay.
and I missed it? Maybe she's on the second or third screen here.
it might be, yeah.
We saw her, Jeff.
That's what's important, as you guys
That's
saw.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Next up is consideration of our Washington County meeting minutes for April 18th, 2022. Any modifications or a recommendation to approve?
So move.
I got Gary Sherrato with a motion to
Second.
approve. Second by, I'm gonna go ahead and give it to Mayor Jones.
With the image instead of the speaking.
She got the hand signal in before the verbal. Any further discussion or adjustments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that takes that off the list. Next up is the Transportation Development Tax Expenditure Request. First up is 5.5 million for the Tualatin for 3 projects on Boons Ferry. Aaron Wardell, I don't know that I saw it. Is Aaron here?
He just popped in.
Here.
Great.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Aaron.
Erin Wardell, Principal Transportation Planner with Washington County. We have a TDT expenditure request from the city of Tualatin. There are actually 3 separate TDT projects, but they're all along Boons Ferry Road, ranging from Tualatin Sherwood Road down to the southern part of the city limits. County staff have reviewed and determined these to be eligible, and the WCCC TAC recommended your approval at their last meeting. And we have Tualatin staff here if there are any specific questions on the projects.
Council, Commission, Group, any questions or comments?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Mayor Bubenik. Do I have a second? Second by Terry Lenahan. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Anybody abstaining? Passes unanimously. Takes us on to the Trimet Climate Action Plan. Provide an overview of the Trimet Climate Action Plan. And is Tara O'Brien from Trimet?
Yes.
Tara, you gonna do this? Oh, I see you, Tara. Yeah, I can see the opening there.
Mhm.
I'll let you have the floor. You can just jump right into it.
Great. And I did send along my slides to Whitney and the team. Do you all have those pulled up, or would you prefer I queue up myself?
Whitney, are you going to share those for us?
Teresa should have them. She should be getting them pulled up now.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Okay, great. Sorry. I know you just mentioned staff support
I know
transition.
the transition. Yep. So she should get it pulled up soon.
Okay. Well, as she's starting to pull those up, and feel free to just interrupt me. So it's Tara O'Brien with Trimet. I'm the Senior Government Affairs Coordinator and Trimet rep for WCC as well. And so we had come to WCCC TAC earlier in the month to talk a little bit about our climate action plan that was just finalized last month. And I've reached out to many of your staff as well as we were pulling this plan together. And so thought it would be useful to bring this to the full committee and let you know a little bit more about what Trimet was working on for our internal climate action plan, specifically how we can hopefully align some of our actions, since I know many of you have climate action plans for your own jurisdictions as well. So Teresa, do you want me to pull up my slides? I'll just go ahead and do that. Okay.
That would
Hold
be
on.
fine.
Okay, hold on just a second, everyone. I've got it right here. Great. Okay. Okay. Can everyone see Trimet's climate action plan slides? Great. Okay. So as I was just saying, today I'm going to talk a little bit about our climate action plan that Trimet just finalized last month, with a focus on our internal targets for our operational emissions and greenhouse gas emissions and the analysis that we conducted, as well as our actions to achieve our targets in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So as you all know, we've been working on our sustainability efforts at Trimet for some time. And so why develop a climate action plan now? It was actually part of FTA's Sustainable Transit for a Healthy Planet Challenge, where they challenge transit agencies across the country to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and to really put a plan in place. So we were one of over 100 transit agencies participating in that challenge when we submitted our climate action plan last month to the FTA, and they have reissued a call for more transit agencies to participate next year. And so as part of this process, we really kind of dug into our numbers of our own, the impacts of our own accomplishments for greenhouse gas emission reduction, and really putting a plan in place for how to get to a net zero transit agency. And so that really required us to dig deep into our baseline carbon inventory and to set clearer targets for the future. So I'll talk a little bit about that today. And I will not linger on the climate benefits of transit or talk about our accomplishments over time, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. But by being a transit agency and helping provide an option for people to get out of their cars, we're working to reduce regional emissions and committed to actions that will increase transit mode share and support regional and state strategies for greenhouse gas emission reduction. And so by building transit infrastructure, we're focused on what we can do to help provide that option. And so today we are not focused on the external strategies for building transit mode share, and we are working closely with Metro and many of you as partners on the ridership recovery piece of transit, but we wanted to really focus on kind of what we are doing as an agency internally. So, next, so Trimet, we really had to dig into our baseline emissions, and what you're looking at here is our CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas emissions from 2017 through 2020. And this inventory was conducted in early 2021. And you'll see here the green is the impacts of our fleet. The orange are the impacts of our electricity usage. And so those are our two largest areas of greenhouse gas emissions reduction. And I will just say FY 2020 for us ended at the end of June 2020. And so it is just a few months into COVID. And so this does not show any changes that were made to our emissions based on any service reductions or changes there. And I will just say this assessment is really focused on our what they call scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, as well as upstream energy production, which is the emissions from generation of electricity, such as natural gas fueled electrical plants, and production of other fuel sources such as biodiesel. So it's not focused on things like or supply chain or solid waste impacts, but really the items that we have the most control over.
Tara?
Yes.
How does that, is this just fleet-based emissions, or does it also include operations for the buildings, the shops,
yes, buildings,
those kind of things?
Yes, so that's the orange here. So facilities and all our buildings and real estate is included in our assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Sorry if that was not clear. Yes, that is a large portion as well. But in light of doing that analysis and seeing the impacts of our fleet on our emissions as well as facilities, we made two big shifts in 2021, which you likely heard a little bit about, that we made the transition to renewable energy at all our facilities. So Max electric bus and our facilities are now powered 100% by renewable energy. We participate in both PG and Pacific Power programs for that. And then in December of last year, we transitioned our entire bus fleet to using R99 renewable diesel. And that is 99% renewable diesel, 1% petroleum. And so this change in fuels for our fleet made a huge impact on our fleet's emissions, and it does factor in the upstream emissions of making and delivering R99 to our facilities, but this reduced our greenhouse gas emissions from the Trimet's fixed route bus by about 61% compared to the biodiesel that we had been using. And I'm happy to speak a bit more to that anyway. So this is one of the key takeaways that we were emphasizing in our climate action plan that we wanted to make sure you are all aware of. So this was the 2020 before number we had showed you, and then we did that analysis and made the two large transitions from for our fleet and facilities. And so by switching to renewable electricity and then switching to R99, we saw a 63% reduction in our operational emissions at our facilities and from our fleet. So that's a huge reduction over just the course of 1 year. And so we were very excited to see that impact, and we will be doing annual tracking of this emissions reduction to further look into the ongoing reductions of some of these categories. And so from there, so moving on to our targets. So this was our goal is ultimately to get to net zero transit agency by 2050. And we started from our baseline of FY 2020 and what our emissions were then, as I had showed you. Just over last year, we did have that huge reduction and already have surpassed our target, getting to 63% emissions reduction by switching to renewable electricity and renewable diesel. And so the next targets to be aware of is where our actions in this climate action plan are really getting to the rest of the way there. And so looking to get to 70% emissions reduction by 2030, and we're certainly already on track for that. And 90% emissions reduction overall by 2040. And that is also our goal for the transition of our entire bus fleet to zero emissions, which I can speak a bit more to in a few minutes and answer any questions about that as well. Okay, so I'll talk just a little bit about some of the actions in our climate action plan to help us get the rest of the way there. And as I said, we really just want to emphasize some of the things we're doing, and if there are opportunities for us to collaborate with some of you. And I've talked with some of your staff already about ways to coordinate on several of these efforts. So these are the main categories that we're focused on for the actions of our climate action plan. And we have dozens of ongoing metrics that we will be tracking now on an annual basis to help achieve these key actions. So as I was saying before, and as we talked about last month in the presentation from Trimet, we do have ridership recovery efforts underway, and that is not the focus of today's presentation. We have several other strategies focused on rebuilding transit ridership, but it is a key piece of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and meeting our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals as a state and region. And so these are not focused on our internal operational emission reductions, but just our general participation to continue to advance climate goals that the region and state have. So as you all saw, fleet and fuel were one of our biggest sources of emissions. You may have heard before that Trimet was the largest consumer of diesel in the state. We are now the largest consumer of renewable diesel in the state, and that emission reduction made a significant impact. And so in addition to our transition to renewable diesel, we are committed to transitioning to our zero emission bus fleet by 2040. And we just 2 weeks ago, our board authorized our first bulk purchase of battery electric buses, 24 buses, which we're very excited about and expect those in the next 2 years. It's quite a process due to supply chain issues, but that is part of our zero emission fleet transition plan. And then some other exciting news from that last board meeting, our board just approved the transition of R99 for both our Lyft paratransit buses and WES, and that has already begun last week. So from that 63% reduction graph I showed you, we're already now tracking to be at 67% reduction by making that additional transition to R99. And then the transition to electric vehicles for non-revenue vehicles will have a smaller impact. We don't have as large of a non-revenue vehicle fleet as our bus fleet or paratransit fleet, but that is one of the tools in our toolbox to continue to reduce our emissions. And then we are in the process of completing a zero emission fleet transition plan. That's actually one of the requirements for applying for this current round of federal grants, a new requirement this year. And so that will really chart out exactly how much fleet charging infrastructure is necessary at each of our bus spaces and the timeline for that. And that does include evaluating hydrogen fuel cell electric buses as a key strategy within our zero emission fleet strategy. So that plan is underway now, and it will include hydrogen fuel cell electric buses, part of how we will get to zero emission. Then for our facilities, a big component of ongoing actions for continuing to reduce the impact of our facilities is just to look at the long-term renewable energy commitments and typical modernization, reducing electricity use strategies, and we'll be tracking this on an annual basis. We also are looking to reduce square footage of office space where there is now more teleworking opportunities available. And for our facilities, there will be significant transition to have to retrofit those to support our zero emission fleet. So that is underway. And then this last category to say a few words about, and then I'm happy to take lots of questions. We have several internal operations for ongoing analysis that we'll need to conduct to really figure out how to get to net zero transit agency and really evaluating the pros and cons of some of those strategies. So we do now have a process for tracking of annual carbon inventory updates and reporting back to our executive team and the board on those strategies and where they're at. And then a key part of our process is also continuing to use Trimet's equity lens in making decisions about the deployment of zero emissions fleet. There is a new planning effort underway where we are using our equity lens and air quality monitoring to evaluate the deployment of the next phase of battery electric buses and where that will go. And then lastly, we have several just evaluation and research projects now underway to look at should we be focusing on switching out refrigerants that we use, or are there solid waste actions that we can take to kind of address some of those smaller bands on the chart of emissions where we have less control over, but actions that we can take to do that. Also looking into employee commutes and the impact of that on our emissions. And then lastly, carbon offsets. That's something that is really a longer term strategy if there is no way to get to zero emissions otherwise. But looking into some of the different strategies that other transit agencies or jurisdictions might be using for that. And so with that, I'm happy to go back to any slide that would be useful or take any questions, but mostly just wanted you all to be aware of some of our efforts and have the opportunity to ask questions. So, okay, Mayor Snyder.
Well, I will just say that I think this presentation's been, at least for me, a little bit inspirational because it gives an example. It appears to me like Trimet is taking really serious action on this front. And I think in some cases, agencies have sort of viewed this as daunting, and how do we get there? And we've got aspirational goals, and those are all great, but I feel like watching this presentation, you all are actually doing something and having a big impact. And so I think other agencies or jurisdictions may be coming to all of you. I know you've got a little bit of a different maybe situation because of the size of the fleet and what you're, just the nature of what you're doing, but still, I think there's a lot that can be learned from this. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I did have some questions back and forth with your staff last week, and look forward to working with you all on either helping out with some of the calculations we used or assumptions, because I think it has been really useful for us to just guide the investments and know the impact of some of these decisions that we're making. So thank you. Other
Others with
questions or
comments?
comments?
Yes.
Yep.
Councilor Rosner.
Oh, hi there. Sorry for being late. Keith asked
That's
me
okay.
to pull in today, and but he waited till 10 after to tell me, so that's why I was late. So anyway, you mentioned during your presentation, and I apologize, I caught the tail end of it.
Okay.
You're also looking at bringing ridership back and recovering
Mhm.
your riders. And maybe this is a wider conversation. Maybe you could come out to Sherwood for, but you know, in the case of Sherwood, we have 9,000 residents that commute out of our town to work. And most of them, 50% commute more than 10 miles. And they're going to the work centers in Hillsborough, in Wilsonville, and partially downtown Portland. They just don't have a lot of options, you know, in terms of how to get those to those work centers. So they're all driving cars. So in terms of, sorry about that. In terms of, you know, reducing
Everything's
emissions,
okay.
yeah, no, that's my phone. In terms of reducing emissions, you know, that's another route to take in finding ways to provide better opportunities, mass transit opportunities to move people around from the different work centers to the different residential areas in the county. Not everyone is just Portland and back, and that's kind of how we're set up right now with Trimet.
Absolutely. And I think one thing I was saying is this plan is not our ridership recovery plan. And this is that our focus was more on our internal emissions, but acknowledging the several actions underway that we need to get to as a region to increase ridership. And so I think we certainly want to have that follow-up conversation as part of the Forward Together work that is underway, which is really kind of the phase one of service recovery and looking at what we need to do to consider ways to build ridership and expand and then the follow-up for service expansion. And so I think those are definitely areas that we are working on and want to continue talking with you and your team about as we evaluate how to bring transit to more people as a regional strategy to reduce emissions. And so I hope that there'll be some more opportunities to work together on that as part of the RTP update as well. Because I agree, we know that just by giving more people the option, it will help us reduce our regional emissions.
And thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we would love to have conversations with you during the formulative stage of that, because it'd be really helpful for us to have more options out here. And I think we have a lot of good input that we could give. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Others with questions, comments?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point.
I'm gonna maybe ask a different angle on this. Operational costs, right? This is great. I mean, it's very inspirational. I absolutely echo the stuff that Mayor Snyder mentioned about the inspirational nature of those going to renewable energy and the R99. But what was the operational cost? Do you guys have any fractional idea of increase for going from even the biodiesel to the R99 or in comparison to conventional diesel, and then also the renewable energy fractional cost to go 100% renewable?
I do. I'm at least prepared for the first question. And I think the transition to R99 from biodiesel is about a 9 cent a gallon premium. And we were able to take advantage of that contract and take advantage of the transition to R99 from our previous biodiesel blend, and that made sense for us from a fuels perspective and priority perspective. I am not sure the exact difference in cost for transition to renewable energy, both through PGE and Pacific Power's program, but can definitely report back on that. Is something we had made a commitment to do and evaluated the different options. And we, as I had said, don't have a long-term commitment right now. And so we're still evaluating, I forget when both of those contracts go to, but still evaluating kind of the long-term opportunity for that, which I'm sure will continue to change in terms of the costs as there's more demand for making that switch from other big larger users. I will say in terms of the longer term costs for the transition for our zero emission fleet, through the federal infrastructure bill, there are a lot of opportunities for funding right now. And so that's why we've really been, not just so we can apply for these current federal grants, the low and no emission bus program that we apply for every year, which is one of the good pots of money for getting more electric buses and charging infrastructure, but take advantage of other large federal grant opportunities to help fund this while we know this infrastructure bill exists. And so we've kind of, as part of that zero emission fleet transition plan, have done that analysis to know, okay, what's the gap we see over the long term in the needs, the costs that we'll have for some of this charging infrastructure and the cost savings over time. And so we're really digging into that funding plan, but looking to a lot of federal funding to support that that project. And I think we've brought to some of you before, we're looking to make some early improvements to Merlot Garage in Beaverton to add capacity for bus charging infrastructure and articulated electric buses in the short term, so we can start building capacity for more electric buses on the west side. So it's a very long-term strategy to get us to 2040, but I can definitely get back to you on the renewable energy costs, but at least know that piece on the premium we had for R99. And so I know there's a lot of demand for R99 as well. And so the sooner we transition and take advantage of some of that federal money for more electric buses, probably the more R99 will be available for other large users of diesel to transition to that.
And that was my follow-on question is the availability of R99 to be, you guys are, you take a big drink from the pond, right? So are you guys concerned that you're draining the entire R99 pond? So can you continue to get that operational until you have time enough to transition to electrification or even hydrogen?
I would say we hope so. From what I've heard, I think LTD Lane Transit District is probably one of the second largest users of R99. And so obviously it is making a difference that we are using that in your communities right now, just that we're running cleaner buses down the roads. And we certainly hope to continue to do that and are working on the transition. So hopefully there is no gap and we'll be able to keep using that to run cleaner buses until we get 100% zero emission buses.
Well, cool. Is there any other questions, comments from the committee? Well,
great.
Tara, I will endeavor to get your name correct. I will not guarantee it's
Tara.
going to be this. Tara, see? Tara, see, I can't even do it there. Maybe 6 months. We'll keep working on it. That's my usual glide path on that. People are still hammering my last name, so I have a sensitivity to trying to get it right for folks. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for having me. Happy to answer any follow-up questions as your jurisdictions are working on climate action plans or looking at their fleet or facility and connect you with folks from our team. So thanks so much.
Great. And I think to what Councilor President Rosner said too, I think it's really, there's that whole other issue of trying to figure out how do we get, some more people on the bus, right? How do we make that workable as a transportation model for folks, and all of us working together to help figure that out, because it's obviously an opportunity. We just need to figure that out. So that's great.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Well,
everyone.
I think that takes us on to MSTIP 2328, review projects submitted for the funding, consideration, and review evaluation process. Chris, I think you have the primary spot on this one.
I am going to turn it over to Erin Wardell here, who's going through it. I just want to say that she will provide an update, and you probably already saw a list of the projects submitted for funding consideration in the PowerPoint if you looked in the package. And Erin's going to go over that project list with you and the process that will lead us to our next major milestone, which is releasing this project list for public comment later by the end of June. So she'll walk you through what we've heard and the process. And
Thank you, Chris.
we expect a lot of questions, so don't be shy.
We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So as Chris briefly covered, we will be talking through our submitted projects today. We'll be talking about the homework assignment, the project evaluation that we've given to the WCCC TAC members, and then talking through next steps. Before we get into showing you the submitted projects by Commissioner District, I did want to say at a high level, we received 33 individual project submittals, and the preliminary cost estimates for all of those projects is about $400 million. We think that those cost estimates are likely on the low side, and some of them will probably be even more once we've had the cost estimates reviewed by an independent consultant that we're hiring. We have about $160 million to allocate. So we are gearing up for, quite frankly, some pretty tough conversations later in the year as we think about which of these projects are ripe to be funded by MSTIP and which of these projects we may want to be considering other funding sources for. So just a little bit of background before we jump into the projects by Commissioner District. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So in District 1, we received 12 projects submitted. These projects include, all of the projects actually from all the districts include projects that were submitted for construction dollars, which may include design, some projects submitted just for design, and some projects that were submitted as potential match or leverage dollars for some other funding source. So for District 1, the projects are Complete Street Project on Blanton, Complete Street Project on Alexander, Complete Street Project on 170th, a complete street project on 185th, and then a bridge replacement on 205th. And these are all construction dollar projects, that first set. On Farmington Road, we received a potential match project for state funds to support improvements to a complete street on Farmington, as well as a jurisdictional transfer to the county. For Allen Boulevard, we received a request for design funds towards an eventual complete street project. For construction dollars towards a Canyon Road streetscape and safety project, for construction dollars for a part of the Beaverton downtown loop project, for a construction project on Allen Boulevard for sidewalk infill specifically, and then for design funds for a Hall Boulevard complete street plan. So in total, the, again, preliminary cost estimate for District 1 is $150.5 million. Any questions on District 1 before we move on? Mayor Beatty?
I think not specifically about these projects, but will we see a graph potentially of where past maybe like the last 10 years of investment, like where it's been in the county? Because I think that's helpful too, because not every district has been funded equally or the same, and not that I'm advocating that it should, but it would be helpful, I think, for future understanding of where is the majority of this investment gone when we're trying to make future decisions.
Yes, that is information that we've been working on gathering, and we can bring that forward. We've shared in some of the previous presentations a map that shows where the past MSTIP funds have been allocated, but we can also prepare a summary of that for you. I know that for the last few cycles of MSTIP allocation, it was generally equally distributed amongst the 4 commissioner districts, because that's been one of the guiding principles of the program. Going all the way back to 1986, it gets a little bit more complicated with those initial levies, because I'm not sure if that's how the first 3 levies were formulated. But that is information we can bring forward. We've been getting that question from others as well.
Thank you, because that's helpful, because equally spreading this funding doesn't address some of our historically underfunded neighborhoods. And so I know District 1 has more needs, and not just because, I mean, I'm part in District 1 and part in other districts as well, but I know funding them equally to newer areas doesn't make the most sense to me.
And the board has directed staff to consider that as a principle going forward for the program. So that's how we've been framing it. If the board would like to go a different direction with that, that would be a decision for them to make. So that's why we've been framing it around the districts. Council President Rosner.
Yeah, just to pound that nail a little bit farther in, I would agree, seeing that the historical spending is really important. And in a previous meeting, there was a map that was shown to us of projects that have occurred, but that map, at least I know in the Sherwood area, included projects that were not MSTIP projects. For instance, there was a lot of road improvements around our high school that were done, which were funded by that bond. So as you guys work on that, just make sure that we're filtering it out to just the MSTIP projects that have been funded.
We'll certainly work on getting that together.
Awesome, thank you.
And Stephen, did I see your hand go up as well?
Yeah, you said what I was going to add. I think just to be clear with everyone, the last 2 programs, certainly one of the guiding principles has been to, as equally as possible, sort of split the money amongst the 4 commissioner districts. And again, that gets back to the root outcome objective of the program of trying to ensure that there's distribution of the funds across the county as a countywide property tax source.
So let's move on to the next slide and we'll talk through District 2. So for District 2, projects submitted include construction on Saltzman Road. This would be a complete street project that may include a new alignment or improvements to an existing alignment. This project was partially funded in 3E. We also had a project submittal of a match towards improvement at the Beaverton Hillsdale Highway, Olson Road, Shoals Ferry Road intersection. I think many of us are very familiar with this intersection. It's a very challenging project, and so we would need additional funding in order to complete it. We have 3 individual segments of Walker Road summarized here. And the reason we split them into segments is because they're all relatively high dollar projects. So we have the Walker Road segment from Parkway to Westfield, the Walker Road segment that is at the intersection with Cedar Hills, essentially, so Westfield to 123rd, and then the Walker Road segment from 123rd to Highway 217. And each of these would be complete streets projects. And then we have a match towards the 185th Avenue Max Overcrossing project. This would potentially be a federally funded project for grade separation of the light rail line. Any questions on District 2? Next slide. Okay, so District 3 project proposals. We have a project submitted for a match towards the Basalt Creek Parkway extension projects. This would be primarily a bridge structure between Grams Ferry and Boons Ferry Road, and we would be seeking external funds in order to complete it. This next project is actually misclassified. We had an update to this PowerPoint, and I think that we're showing the previous version, unfortunately. So the 175th Avenue design should actually be moved into District 1. So you will be seeing an update to that before you see this again. So this would be doing the design for an eventual curve realignment on 175th Avenue. Our next project would be construction of a complete street project on Edie Road. The next project would be construction of a complete street project on Greenberg Road and possibly as a part of a jurisdictional transfer from the county to Tigard. Our next project would be construction of the Herman Road, Cypole Road intersection, and then a complete street project along Herman Road. Our next project would be construction of improvements to the Tualatin Sherwood Road and Boons Ferry Road intersection. The next one is construction of the 65th Avenue and Borland intersection turn lane. And then we have a complete street construction project on Boons Ferry Road, essentially from Norwood down to the I-5 interchange area. And then finally in District 3, a proposal for the Bridgeport Interchange Area Management Plan. So this is what are called IAMPS, Interchange Area Management Plan, for the Upper Boons Ferry and I-5 interchange area. Any questions on District 3? Mayor Snyder?
I don't know if I'm asking questions, more making comments like others, so sorry.
Either way is fine. We'll take comments too.
Yeah, I guess I just want to make the point for perhaps others to be considering that, you know, while there's a goal to distribute things within and have projects in each district, I also think it's really important that we're fully funding the projects that meet the criteria as best as possible, particularly around, like to Mayor Beatty's point, you know, areas that have been historically underinvested or where projects meet our equity goals. What I would not want to see, I guess I'll just say the corollary to this, what I would not want to see is us, you know, sort of scoping down a bunch of projects so that we can get a bunch of things done sort of halfway, in the spirit of, you know, everybody gets a little bit of something, or however you want to look at that. I just think that's a big mistake, and frankly ends up meaning that we get to do projects over again much sooner than we should otherwise. And so I would just encourage us not to just generally, and the county commission to not be thinking that way.
Thank you. Mayor Truax.
Yeah, if we could go back to one slide to District 2 proposals. I was slow on the switch getting to that. I have a question about
Going the wrong way. We need to go the other direction.
Yeah, District.
There we go,
2.
District 2.
Yeah, there you go. The Max Overcrossing project at 185th, even though that is in District 2 physically, that's a project that benefits the entire region. It's a classic example of what I think maybe Mayor Beatty and Mayor Snyder were talking about, that this is a proposal, this particular project is physically located in District 2, but it's important to Districts 1, 2, 3, and 4, as far as I can see, as far as the transportation network is concerned. It's also important on an equity level to allow those, transit, especially Max, to be much more user friendly. So and for all. So I don't know if you have a proposal that says, even though a slide that it says, even though these projects are located in these districts, they are of significance across not only Washington County, but across Metro. And maybe there's another category that the TAC and this group could take a look at in regard to something like that, because it seems to me that that's a $17 million project that is going to benefit all of us. I guess my 2 cents adjusted for inflation. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. And that project was difficult for us to classify, and we understand going into these conversations that there would be some comments like that coming forward. We were just trying to do a rough assignment of the projects to a district, but this is where that gets a little bit challenging. The project physically actually runs right along the border between districts 1 and 2. So we made a decision that it's maybe a little bit more in 2, but it certainly does provide some traffic congestion benefits directly to districts 1 and 2, and then the light rail ridership benefits could be for all of the districts. So that is something we'll be taking into consideration as these conversations go forward. And we've noted your comments today.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Beveren?
Yes, sorry about that. I'd just like to echo some of the sentiments that Mayor Truax just expressed with respect to the benefit of that particular project to not only the cities of Hillsborough and Beaverton, but also it's benefiting a lot of those commuters from Aloha and some of the underserved areas, and it certainly straddles the border. That's why it's one of our top priorities in Hillsborough, knowing the mutual benefit that it provides for the entire mobility of the region. So we're on board with that particular approach that Mayor Truax invoked. Thanks.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, I think again, back to sort of the overarching criteria for the program. The idea is that these are hopefully we're funding projects that are of import to the entire county and in some cases the region. So again, while there's projects in various districts, as an example, I think Councilor Rosner mentioned there's a lot of demand between Hillsborough and the Sherwood Tualatin area. So Tualatin Sherwood is a really important road in Sherwood and Tualatin, but it's being used by people from around the region and certainly the county. And so there is that delicate balance of trying to figure out a way to sort of spread the funds around the county geographically, in an acknowledgement that the fundamental nature of the program is really projects that have a benefit to the larger community that really do help build out that countywide or in some cases a regionally significant system. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and go to the District 4 slide. Okay, so District 4 project proposals. We have a design project proposed for the Wren Road and Sussbauer Road intersection. We have a proposal for construction dollars for the Oregon 47 at Southwest Fern Hill Road, Maple Street intersection. We have construction dollars proposed for the Glencoe Road and West Union Road intersection for a potential future roundabout. We have construction dollars proposed for a complete street project on North 19th Avenue in Cornelius. We also have construction dollars proposed for a signal at TV Highway and 345th. And that project's in Cornelius. And then we have construction dollars proposed for the intersection at Cornell Road and Brookwood Parkway. And then this last project actually was reclassified once we mapped the projects. It's actually over the border into District 2. And so that one will be moving as well, but it is a complete street project on Walker Road. So we actually have 4 different projects proposed along various stretches of Walker Road for this cycle of MSTIP, which is interesting. So you'll see this updated next time you see this presentation or next time you see the list of the projects. So any questions on District 4 or any of the projects or comments? Mayor Snyder.
Well, it occurred, I mean, you're talking about moving one of the projects out of District 4 on this list. And again, I don't know that the district, thing is the best way to look at this, but it does appear like there's a lot fewer projects and a lot fewer dollars in this district. And I'm not an expert on the geographic boundaries of every district. I know some of them, but is this just a more rural district that's got less sort of issues, or what's going on with the difference here? Just
no, I think this has happened in previous cycles of MSTIP as well. And I think that, so District 4 encompasses rural Western Washington County, but it also encompasses a big part of the city of Hillsborough, as well as Forest Grove, Cornelius, North Plains, Banks, Gaston. So it's not that there's not a lot of need in District 4, but I think that the cities that are within District 4 that had projects really considered projects that they thought met the criteria, explicitly met the criteria of being on major streets. And you'll notice almost all of them are actually on county roads as well. Some of the cities in other districts did not consider that, and they put forward projects that maybe aren't on county roads or maybe that don't meet that regional criteria as much as some of these projects do. And I'm not saying this to give any sort of a value judgment, because we're going to go through all of these proposals and decide which ones get funding. But just from having worked with all of the cities on their proposals, I think that that was the initiative behind Forest Grove and Hillsborough and North Plains and Cornelius really being very selective in advance of the projects they proposed. Now, on the other side, and the county did this as well as some other cities, there are sometimes some really good reasons for putting forth projects, even if you don't think they'll get funded this cycle. Sometimes it's a good idea for projects to get noticed and to be maybe 10th on the list, but next time they get floated up to the top. And so I think there can sometimes be some good strategy for doing that. And I think some of the other cities chose, and the county chose that approach with putting their projects forward. There certainly is a lot of need in District 4. We're just not seeing a lot of some of those maybe smaller facilities or more locally serving facilities coming forward at this time. I also think that once we have reviewed all of these cost estimates for District 4, it's going to be quite a bit higher. So I wouldn't get too attached to this number right now. I think some of these projects are probably scoped a little bit low based on the planning level cost estimates. So we'll see some more definitive numbers before we make the final decisions later this year. Mayor Beatty?
Yeah, I had a couple other questions. I think maybe progress. I don't know what I was looking for there. So like, I know when we were talking about regional projects, when we were talking about when Metro was looking for the transportation bond, we talked a lot about 185th. Now that's not one of Trimet's high priorities. So if it's not one of their high priorities, but it is one of the city's high priorities, how are we going to wrestle with matching funds? So some of these projects have other matching funds associated with them. So this is last dollar to complete the project, where maybe one like this, its partners aren't ranking it at a really high, probably like their top priority. I'm not dismissing it. I just think this is the reality of the conversation we had about this particular project. So how is that being weighted in? And then I guess, what is the outcome from this board? Are we voting? Are we talking? Is this just, are we going to submit a recommendation? Is this just one-way communication?
Yes, so I think I heard maybe 3 different questions in there. So let me make sure that I get them all and jump in if I don't. So to your last point for today, this is a purely informational item. So we're going through all of the project proposals, and then we'll be outlining for you what these next steps are. And at your June meeting, you will be making a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners about which projects should go out for public engagement in July and August. We think that the list is a little bit too large right now, and so we probably need to pare it back before we go out to engage the community about the project. So that'll be for your June meeting. So today's informational only. As far as the question about some of these projects that are looking for match, we have had this conversation internally, and we don't have a resolution to it yet, but this is something that we'll want to talk about with the WCCC and with the Board of Commissioners going forward. There is a difference for sure between projects that just need a little bit more funds to complete something that's already been designed, it already has most of its construction dollars in place, or a project that can be phased, versus a project that needs some kind of an external match in order to be completed at all. And so the 185th light rail overcrossing or Basalt Creek Parkway, for example, would fall into that category. You can't build part of a bridge, right? Like either you've got it funded or you don't. And so I think that there could be some conversations going forward about, is it a priority to match those projects at this time and hope that other funding comes forward? Or would we rather fund some projects that fall into that other category? And I think that's going to be a really interesting and important conversation for this group and for the board to consider in the months ahead.
Thank you for that. So ahead of our meeting next month, because it is May, will we get some of that other information about like where historic projects have been, how it's been funded, where the match is? Because I think for me to help make a decision recommendation as the Mayor of Beaverton, all of that information would be helpful for me in making that decision.
Yes, we can certainly get you the historic information before your June meeting. So we will put that together. Tara, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in quickly to Mayor Beatty's question because I was just wanted to say I was encouraged to see that there's at least a few projects on this list that have local match as a consideration, because as I was saying before in my presentation, we know there's a lot more federal money available right now and will be at least for the next few years, and that is not a forever assumption. And so though local match is a challenge for some of our big regional priorities and some of the grants that we know we want to get in there, I think we need to keep having the conversation about where that's going to come from. We're certainly at the table talking with Washington County and others about that project, as well as other key regional transit priority projects. So I'm not advocating for one project or another, but just wanted to say I like that it's at least in the list for consideration, because I think identifying local match to take advantage of big federal money right now is important. And so let's figure out how to find it.
No, I 100% agree. And so maybe the third column of information that for me, and I'm sorry, and this may not be helpful for other people, but who is applying for lift or raise grants? Who else is applying for infrastructure? Because if they are applying for infrastructure money and part of the requirement is that, I don't want to say no to this project if that meets the local requirement piece. So if we knew which cities were also seeking federal funding for these projects, like that would be helpful information, because that also helps close the gap. And we're in a once in a generation opportunity to invest in transportation. And I would hope this round of money is a full force multiplier for a lot of us, because we know that we're never going to probably see money like this in a long time. So if that information could be added, I know it's only a month, but I don't want to say no to a project and then close the door for them getting federal money.
Thank you. Mayor Truax?
Yeah, I was hoping, and I realized that you're going to make changes to these tables. If there was an opportunity to, it's not in the packet that I downloaded. I'm missing agenda item 6 on my packet. So, and that was this. So I was hoping if you could get this list to me so I could have a conversation with City Council next Monday night. Especially because there's a boatload of attention out here in our neck of the woods about the Fern Hill Maple Street Highway 47 intersection. We've been in conversation with the county, we've been in conversation with the state on that particular intersection for approximately, I think, the last decade, as the number of accidents and including fatalities has I won't say skyrocketed, but it has increased in that particular area. So we are we're obviously very concerned about that. But I would just like to have the opportunity to present where the money's going on this on these proposals, and also how important it is again to try and restate the case that making sure that each district gets exactly the same amount of money is probably, we're engaged in a fool's errand in that particular situation, because we are not serving the residents of the county if we try and do that. And I think in the past there have been a number of people that have said, yeah, if we're going to pay a tax, we want to get our fair share of it. And I think that's rather archaic thinking, to put it politely. So I do want to be able, though, to explain, and these tables will help me be able to explain what exactly we're trying to do with these particular monies, including a discussion about matches and so on and so forth, so that we can get the biggest bang for the buck. And I think, Forest Grove City Council needs to hear all of that.
So this presentation is linked on the WCCC webpage. It's just not compiled into the packet. The PowerPoints are usually uploaded separately, but it is available there for you to download.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor Delane.
I think one of the things that would help me in the measures too is you continue to look at qualifying these. Will we be seeing the ones that are basically being proposed to address known safety issues, right? So the one that jumps out to me obviously is the 19th Avenue or at the roundabout, basically. That's one of our highest collision intersections in Cornelius, and that roundabout's part of the purpose there is to provide safety for the low-income housing project we're doing there, and also to hopefully reduce or eliminate the number and severity of accidents that occur in that intersection. So I think looking at these with that ability to add that lens on there would be something that would be helpful for me on the recommendations list.
Absolutely. So we do have our evaluation metrics, which the WCCC recommended to the board and the board approved at their April 5th meeting. And one of those evaluation measures is safety and mitigation of known safety hazards. So we didn't have time in advance of this meeting because these projects were just submitted to us very recently. And so we are preparing evaluations of every project against those evaluation metrics, and we'll have that ready to share before your June meeting. Mayor Linehan.
Hi, Erin. Thank you so much. You mentioned that you will be going back and reworking, looking at the list, and some of these costs will probably go up, be higher. Who is actually responsible for pricing these projects? Is it a collaborative effort between the county and the jurisdictions, or not?
No, so for the project submittals, we asked the jurisdiction to give us basically their best known information. And it's a big range, right? We have projects on this list that have gone through almost 100% design, and we have projects on this list that are planning level only. And we know that it's difficult to actually fund full design usually until you get the project money. So we didn't expect everyone to have that information coming in. Instead, we've contracted with Kittleson and Associates, and that's an engineering firm out of Portland. And Kittleson oftentimes does cost estimating work in support of our capital projects. And so they'll be going through and doing a consistent cost estimate for all of the projects so that we're able to compare them really apples to apples and have a good understanding of how much they're likely to cost.
Great, thank you.
Council President Rosner?
I think my question got answered, so I just will reinforce that safety component's really important for us to see. I know one of our submittals is directly related to significant safety issues. We just had 2 young girls killed on Edie Road by a driver, and so we're really interested in making sure those projects move forward. So that's got to be a huge component. And then the other thing I just want to make a comment about, Mayor Truax was talking about, do we divide these monies up based on district or based on need, or, areas that are historically have not got a lot of funding. I do think there's a balance when it comes to that, because that we have to be really careful about, especially with our taxpayers, because they do want to see benefit, coming to their communities. But I do recognize that there are areas that have not historically been funded as much as they should have been. But it's a balance.
That certainly is. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah. I just want to clarify for the PowerPoint, Mayor Truax, I'm sure, sorry, we had a broken link when we first posted this. That's a term, I don't really know what it means, but it means you can't download what you post. So we have fixed this. So there is a current PowerPoint on the website with the changes that Erin mentioned there. We can also follow up. It sounds like we're going to be sending you some more information. We can follow up with this in a different format as well, like a easier to read. So we can add that. But I just wanted you to know that it is there. We just grabbed the wrong one for this show.
I'm downloading it as we speak. So
okay.
I'll be pirating it and using it Monday night. So
okay. All right, that's fine. Go ahead.
And I will take all the credit. So
okay. All right. Just to be clear, thank you.
Thank you.
And I was just going to add, I think if any of you are interested in sharing information with your elected officials, please feel free to do that. And if you have questions or comments or anything that you'd like to share back, you can just email myself, Chris, or Erin, or the 3 of us, and we're happy to take questions, comments, and feedback at any time. So thank you all.
Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about the next steps for how we're going to move forward with evaluating these projects. So we gave the WCCC TAC a homework assignment at their last meeting. And that homework assignment was actually, first of all, to review the project evaluations that county staff did using the evaluation metrics, again, recommended by the WCCC to the board and approved by the board in April. So county staff did that work, but we sent it out to be peer reviewed to make sure that we got it right. We're happy to make adjustments if we did not. And then we asked staff to do 2 different types of evaluations of all of these submitted projects. The first is to allocate approximately $40 million per commissioner district. And we were very clear that this is approximate. We don't want people to be too tied into that number while they're doing this first part of the assignment. And then the second part of the assignment was to select across all the districts the 5 projects that best meet each of the desired outcomes of our program. So that was the homework assignment for TAC members. It's due back to us by the 19th, so a little bit later this week. We've actually had 2 cities already complete their homework. So Forest Grove and Banks both get the gold stars for getting that done ahead of time. We appreciate that and looking forward to seeing the rest of them soon. If we go to the next slide, you can actually see what this looks like. Next slide. There we go. Okay. So this is what this homework assignment looks like. And so you can see in the top box, the spaces to select the 5 projects that best meet those outcomes. And the desired outcomes for the program are equity, safety, economic vitality, natural environment, and livability. And then in the second table, the purpose of that table is to allocate that approximately $40 million per commissioner district. And the purpose of this homework assignment is really to be informational as we go forward. We know that these are all very different projects and all very needed projects. And so we're looking at a couple of different ways to provide more information about them based on technical review, and then bring that information back to you at your June meeting. In addition to giving this homework assignment to our TAC members, we also gave it to some of our technical partners who helped us develop the evaluation metrics. So that's Clean Water Services, the county's Office of Equity and Inclusion. And then in early June, we'll be convening community-based organization leadership workshop, and we'll be talking through this with them as well. And so we'll have quite a bit of information to share in June, and then going forward towards the final decision on the funding allocation later this fall. Next slide. So we've talked a lot about June, and you can see on this slide that we have some things coming up then. So here we are in May. This is your chance to review the list of all submitted projects. We'll then be taking it to the Board of Commissioners on May 24th. We're looking forward to that discussion with them. And then in June, first at the TAC meeting, we'll be reviewing all of the evaluation results and the staff homework exercise. We'll then be asking the TAC to make a recommendation to the WCCC on a way to prioritize the project list in advance of going out for public engagement. We'll then be coming to you at your June meeting and letting you know what the TAC decided to do and sharing all of this information we've received from the evaluations with you as well. So then you'll make your recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And then on June 28th, the board will be reviewing all of that information and authorizing us to go out for public outreach. We're intending to do public engagement, both through online tools and in-person events in both July and August, to really have a chance to talk to the community about which of these projects they'd like to see funded. And so that'll be our next steps. And I think if we go to the next slide, we have our linear timeline that shows the big picture. So here we are, we have completed milestone 2 in March, and now we are moving towards May, and our third milestone will be in July when we go out for public engagement around the project list. And I think our last slide is contact information. So any other questions or comments? Well, we got some homework out of this meeting as well. So we'll be working on putting together that historical information that you've all asked for, and then we'll be working on compiling all of the information we received back from your staff. Stephen?
Thank you, Erin. Just a really kind of a quick closing comment. I do think that just to be clear that the input, the exercise that the TAC is doing right now, and the input that we're asking for from others, it's all in informational only. It's not, those are not folks that are actually setting the priorities. Those are people providing input to you all as decision makers and the board ultimately as decision makers to start trying to help prioritize the project list. But in the interest of having a well-rounded sort of 360 review of the various projects, we're trying to seek input fairly broadly. and really asking ours and your staff to really look at all of the projects and weigh in on those to try to help us make sure that we've done a really good job of trying to provide a consistent evaluation of all the projects. Thank you. And I don't see any hands up. Chair Delane?
I think the question is, does everybody feel like they understand the process moving forward? I think Aaron did a good job laying it out for us, but seeing a few nods, folks seem to understand what we're doing, what our milestones are for the next couple months. Great. That takes us into Jpect DC trip. And I think Aaron Doyle was going to share some updates and questions, comments with us.
Erin is on her way in, being promoted, I believe. Magically appear.
Yep.
Hi. Yeah, there she is.
Erin.
Internet lag. Thank you all. Good afternoon. Erin Doyle from the Government Relations team at Washington County. I just wanted to give a quick update on the Jpect trip to DC. This is very exciting to bring this back this year, but things are moving both very quickly and very slowly all at the same time. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of going back to one of these trips before, such as myself, they used to be annual trips that Jpect would put together, and then as many folks from the region would go out. And there are two different sets of meetings that occurred. One are all of the meetings with the regional delegation that Jpect staff put together. And then there's a second one that Washington County Government Relations has traditionally put together just for Washington County jurisdictions to go in and talk with Representative Bonamici and the senators. And we are working on getting those put together. So the trip dates for the Jpect portion of the trip were originally the June 7th through the 9th, with the 7th being a travel day, and then traveling back on the evening of the 9th, but everyone's responsible for getting their own plane trips and accommodations. That remains true, but Washington County, just looking at the calendar and likelihood of success for meetings, we are looking to do our meetings with the delegation the morning of the 7th. So that means we would, folks who wanted to join that meeting would probably have to fly out on Monday and stay in at least one extra day. The backup for that is if they aren't available on the 7th, hopefully they're around on the afternoon of the 9th, just so we're not missing the opportunity for the Jpect portion of the trip. So what we're hoping the schedule will be is June 7th. Washington County jurisdictions have meetings with our elected federal delegation and or their staff. And then on the 8th, Jpect will take over and we'll have meetings again with the entire regional delegation in the formats that we're finding to be available. I think what will happen, based on what Jpect staff has told me, is on the 8th, we'll have a room on the House side where the delegation will come to us. We'll have a room on the Senate side and the delegation will come to us, as opposed to traveling from office to office. And really, they haven't been doing these types of meetings for quite some time. So they're still working on coordinating, getting these rooms available. It's been a fun challenge for Metro or Trimet's federal lobbyist out there. And then on the morning of the 9th, there will be meetings at the U.S. Department of Transportation. Again, this is kind of a first back type of meeting, not just for us, but for US DOT. So there's also a bunch of clearance that has to happen at US DOT in order to get into the building. So there's a timeliness component of that. So we have to be there in the morning, and then they'll shuffle us into one room. We're taking advantage of some regional folks who work out at US DOT now to get us a room there, and then have set up a series of meetings with folks who have access to funds, which is all we really care about at the end of the day, right? There are two different agendas that would therefore be brought forward. One is the Washington County-based agenda, where we will highlight the projects that are jurisdictionally significant for those of us in the Washington County geography. And then there will be the Jpect agenda, which will have that broader regional scope. Right now, I have been kind of collecting ideas from those of you who are planning to attend, but I don't know that I have a full list of intended attendees. That's a terrible structure of sentence, so I apologize. So if you're planning to come and haven't let me know, please do. If you have ideas of what we should consider for the agenda, please also let me know that. But I will tell you right now, it looks like there's a couple of big county impactful projects that folks would like to put on that list, which include Southwest Corridor and TV Highway, 2 separate projects there. And then just the overall need for support of funding for all types of urban arterials that exist within our jurisdictional boundaries. And that will be, I think, a moment for those jurisdictions that are in the room to talk about the projects they'd like to see funded. There are a multitude of opportunities that we're seeing coming out of the federal government, not just US DOT grants through the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed, but also through the earmarks process, which we're not supposed to call earmarks anymore, but I can't call them anything but earmarks because my brain is wired incorrectly. But those congressionally directed community projects. So there might be opportunities for folks to bring their ideas forward. I do know that they're making those decisions right now. So probably June will be too late, but it'll be an opportunity to say thank you or remind them that you'll be coming back in years future if you can't say thanks. So those kinds of things would be on the agenda for the Washington County jurisdictional specific meeting. If there are other county-wide projects that folks feel need to be on that list, I'm happy to entertain them and talk with those folks who plan to come out. Right now from the county, I will be there to help out. Chris Duffenbach will also be there, as well as Commissioner Rogers. Just our board is figuring out all the members who can make it. So obviously you guys still have time to figure it all out. As always, every elected official or city or county representative that goes is responsible for their own transportation planning, logistics planning. So getting your flights, getting your hotel rooms. Right now, Washington County folks are looking at flying out on Monday, returning on Friday, just in case we do have those afternoon meetings on Thursday, and we are staying near the convention center at the Embassy Suites if folks want to be near us, but obviously your budget's your choice on all of that. So at the end of the day, I would like to get a better head count, and not literally end of day, but as you make your decisions about if anyone from your city is attending, just to let me know so that I can make sure you're in the loop and coordinated on that Washington County part of the meetings. So that way we also get everybody who's there the opportunity to speak to their projects and to their needs. And then the other piece of it is, please, if you are planning to attend, directly contact Tom Markgraf out of Trimet, as he is the one holding all of the attendees list for the Jpect staff portion of this, and also include your cell phone number in that, just so that when people can't find their way in DC, we have a way of finding you. Or if there's another emergency, it's also helpful just to know everybody, having at least one person who knows how to contact everybody. Jpect itself, and I'm sure this will come up when the Jpect agenda is gone over. Jpect itself will be talking about how they are putting together their agenda at the Jpect meeting, but staff is engaged. They are working through the TMAC process to make sure that we've taken into consideration all of the local projects that really have that level of regional significance, but also have a price point that looks more like a bigger federal ask than others. So as you think about what you'd like to see on that list and making sure that you're represented in the Jpect conversation, if you don't feel that you have someone at the table, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know that you'd like to be there. And I will say to the conversation that you just all had about MISTIP, 185th is on the list for potential discussion at Jpect. So because we're trying to find those federal funding opportunities and really push forward how those meet our regional needs. So that list is long and probably will remain long because it's going to be the wish list and a way of starting to make sure that the federal programs can meet our regional needs. So that was a lot of words. I did see that Mayor Truex at some point had his hand up, but then he seems to have disappeared from my screen or took his hand down because I said more words.
You answered my question. I was going to ask where some of the regional projects that we're looking at in our previous discussion, where they would be in that mix of discussion that we need to have. And I'm glad to hear that the MISTIP list in general probably will be part of the discussion. And I think that's a great starting point.
Yeah.
We've used that in the past. By the way, I will be attending along with City Councilor Tim Rippey. You already have that information. So
Thank you. Yeah, I think the other piece of it is Jpect, for those more regional based conversations, is looking to letters and programs and projects that there has been consensus around to really lift up. So thinking like Southwest Corridors on that list, but also some really big projects that have some clear direct opportunities, like the Interstate Bridge Replacement project is going to be on that list. 205 Rose Quarter. I said Southwest Quarter because it's on my mind a lot. But you know, there's other, like Burnside Bridge, you know, kind of looking around the region and making sure that we're representative of, you know, we've done a bunch of different ways of identifying regional priorities, and a lot of them have a transit component as well. So Trimet has brought forward all the things we've supported to the FTA in the past as well. So electrification, and upgrades, things like that. So the list is going to be broad when it comes to the regional priorities. I'd like us to be a little more focused, but show the vast need that the region or Washington County geographically has.
Aaron, I think you exhausted them.
Exactly my point. Thank you all for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Pete, do you want to give us an update on impact?
Yeah, I can. You all have the list of the work program, and it hasn't changed significantly since that was published. May 25th is the next Jpect meeting. We'll be looking at various shelter providers reporting on shelter siting and what some of the barriers are to that, and especially planning out what next winter is going to look like in that particular process. The regional mobility policy update, Kim Ellis will join us again, talking about again the update and case study findings. Kim, along with Glenn Boland of ODOT, will be there. The RTP again, Kim Ellis will be talking about that with relationship to the congestion pricing policy, and the RTP again, safe and healthy urban arterials. John Merman and Lake McTighe, Metro will be making that particular report, and closing out the meeting of the mobility policy for 2023, and that will be again Kim and members of ODOT talking about that. So tilted heavily towards the regional mobility policy update and where we are going to be on that. So that's in May 25th, and then it's RTP again in the summer in the June meeting, plus the mid-cycle UGB expansion update from Tigard, and that'll be Ted Reed and Alyssa Gertler, and I'm assuming members of Tigard staff to present that particular issue. So that's the next two meetings, May 25th and June 22nd. I'll shut up.
Folks, do you have any questions or comments for Pete on impact? Thanks for going to that and covering that for us, Pete. I think you've heard all of our various feedback on regional mobility policy and pricing, and you know, questions and concerns about how that could really affect people. So I leave that in your capable hands. Jpect, I know Mayor Callaway's out. Chris, were you going to try to walk us through a couple of things that are coming up on Jpect this week?
I can do that. So for the Jpect agenda, there are your standard amendments to the MTIP, Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program. One of them is an increase in funding for the I-205 project. I think you might have heard the bids came in higher than the money. There will be a request to action to approve for the Metro to approve the funding that the OTC has already approved for that project. Then there will also be an action to approve the Unified Planning Work Program, which Jpect signed draft last month or the month before. And that sort of lays out all the regional and federally funded planning projects in the region. That's a requirement for all MPOs. Then you will, Jpect, also have an introduction to the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. And I'm sure you all remember how the Columbia River Crossing project ended, and then this project came up. We had someone from the IBR team come a few months ago, and there was a lot of interest from you about wanting to keep track of that. Well, they're back with a proposed locally preferred alternative, and they'll be seeking Jpect endorsement of that in June. So there's an opportunity for introductions. And then there's also a regional flexible fund allocation process. And this is going to come back to you as well. So I was going to cover a couple of these in the agency update section, but just to jump ahead a little bit, we have the Interstate Bridge Replacement project staff coming to you in June to give. This is a really significant project. The cost is significant. It's you only build these bridges every 100 years or 50 years or so. So it's a big project, and it's going to be important for the whole region to track. So that this is coming. We've asked them to. We've asked them to come in June, so you'll hear about it. For those of you on Jpect, you'll hear about it a couple of times, but it will take a while to soak in because it's a big project. And same thing with the regional flexible funds. Just a reminder, I was going to cover this later, but while I'm on it, this you're going to at Jpect, you're going to see the results of the evaluation from all the projects that have been submitted for that funding. You're going to see that on Thursday. This will be coming, it'll be going out for public comment in June, and then back to you in July, where you will be asked, as well as the other coordinating committees, to submit comments, priorities, to have a chance to weigh in on the priorities and send those back to Metro. So I kind of did two. I did that. As Aaron Doyle said, there will also be discussion about the Jpect trip and the regional priorities. And I did want to point out to follow up on something that Aaron Doyle said, that these trips to Jpect are really focused on, both the trips to DC are really focused on policies that Jpect has already signed off on. And the building blocks for this next trip are two letters that we put in your packet. One of them is to the congressional delegation laying out transit discretionary fund grant priorities, and you'll see the 185th crossing and others that you talked about today. And then the other letter in your packet is the one that Jpect sent to the Oregon Transportation Commission, laying out priorities for use of federal funds that came through the new infrastructure bill. So those are two of the sort of building blocks, and they cover the points that Aaron raised about the need to look, support investments on urban arterials. So you'll have a lot of conversations at Jpect. So, Chair, I think are there any questions on that agenda?
I think the committee's all chatted out.
Yeah, okay. Then the only other thing in terms of upcoming events, I just wanted to say, so I mentioned the regional flexible fund process coming to you. And just the only other thing to say is that the regional transportation plan, as Mayor Truax mentioned, there's a lot of significant policies there. And one of the things that you recommended in a letter to Kim Ellis and Metro during the scoping was a chance for Jpect to have really deep discussions about these key policy issues. And Metro is moving forward to schedule those, and it gives us a template to with a big one each month for several months to work with our TAC members to sort of help prepare you for those discussions. So we're going to be trying to time bringing those kind of meaty policies to you and sort of align that with the workshop. So we're figuring that schedule out, and just want you to know that we're working to bring those up to you. And they have to do with the priorities for investments on high capacity transit and that new strategy. They have to do with the pricing. They have to do with the urban arterial policies. They have to do with some of the revenue, and there's more. So there's quite a bit coming.
Chris, you and I got the chance to talk about how are we going to make it through all that material? There seems to be a lot, especially with those, isn't it 4 more meetings they've scheduled to kind of dig into that stuff?
Yeah.
And I think you and I talked about maybe the possibility is how does the WCCC wanted to weigh in on that, how to prep for that? And I think kind of the two possible answers that you and I came up with is we all meet more frequently. So we'd have to have like a pre-meeting of this group and prep for those meetings. Or do we do tactical breakouts like subcommittees and, people that are deeply interested and want to delve in deeper to some of these topics, maybe they end up meeting. And that would hopefully not be all of us still having another meeting, but I was looking for maybe some feedback, or at least if people don't have it today, need to be thinking about how we want to try to chew on that amount of homework that's going to be substantive policy direction and discussion with Metro. I said a lot of words there. Did anything go in? Mayor Jones.
So as one of the few cities in this that is not part of Metro, I love the idea of there being breakout committees.
Okay, Mayor Truax.
Yeah, I think it's imperative that we sit down and meet, not to push back against the breakout committees, but this is a conversation that WCCC probably has to have a lot, and the one meeting a month is not going to cut it here for the next year or so. So I would be recommending looking at an additional meeting, maybe every other month, 3 meetings every 2 months, so that we can get a handle on this stuff. Because I look at those work schedules that MPAC and Jpect have, and ours are going to look an awful lot like that.
Well, and I think, Chris, isn't it one every month that they have a focus topic on? And is it June or is it July they start?
Late June, I think.
So there's like a late June, then a July, then an August, then a September.
Something like that. We're trying to get our arms around it as well.
Right. I as the Jpect alternate, I got sent those, but Chris got them through the staff to staff. So yeah. So that's Stephanie wants to bow out because she's not subject directly to Metro, just to all the things we do under Metro. Pete's saying looks like we're going to be meeting twice a month. Any other feedback, Stephen?
Yeah, I was just going to add, listening to the different comments, I think, we talked about the idea of potentially looking at some sort of workshop type briefings for you. And I think we could do that, and we'll just make sure to invite everybody, but they would be information meetings only, not I don't believe taking specific actions. So attendance could be voluntary for those who can attend or have an interest in attending, and perhaps those who don't could opt out. But I think that does make some sense. So we'll huddle up and take a look at the Metro schedule and how that might align with our meetings. And then I feel that if there were a desire to have a formal recommendation action of some sort from the WCCC, then we may be able to try to sequence those into your regular meetings without taking an undue amount of time.
Yeah. Folks, any feedback on time? Would we want to try to do another lunch hour, hour and a half, 2 hours during the month, you know, the week after WCCC or 2 weeks after? Or do we need to do a doodle poll? I hate to say those words. I feel so peevish when I hate to say doodle poll, but any feedback on time for those meetings? Okay, completely up to staff is what I heard. Great.
Jeff, I'll just say, I think this time generally seems to work for people, but you know, I would spread them out so it's not week after week, maybe.
No, and I think kind of what the way these topics are going to come out to us from Jpect is one a month, right? It's June, July, August, September. We're going to have one of them we need to provide feedback on. So I think if we could have one additional meeting, I think maybe 90 minutes in prep for each one of those. I think that's kind of what we're looking at to kind of prep us up so that we could, you know, come into our meeting, have a good discussion, and be prepared to put a good statement and have Nafisa, Steve, and I loaded up with the appropriate feedback for Jpect. Barring disagreement, that's the plan.
Great. All right, we'll do some homework and we'll try to report out as soon as we can about our first date.
Great. Chris, Stephen, did you have anything else you wanted to copy? I know we had some future agenda topics, but we kind of covered all that stuff, I thought, in Chris's update already. Pete, you got something?
Nope, we're good.
Yeah, I would like to, I represent on Impact the other cities in Washington County. That's my title. And so at these particular meetings, I try and take where you are and what kinds of, where you want me to stand as far as those other cities, other than the two largest cities in the county, Hillsborough and Beaverton. So that's, to me, this is a pretty important position. And I'm not seeking re-election. So my term as mayor will end in November. And the WCCC will need to appoint somebody to take that other cities in Washington County label and attach it to themselves for that. And I don't know if it's the largest. I don't know if it's Hillsborough that's responsible for the voting on that, but I think that's how we've done it in the past, that Hillsborough gets the turn in the barrel to poll, get nominations, and send that out the slate, and then announce who is the other representative. And there will also need to be an alternate for that particular position too. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person coming from the same city as the major, as the other representative, but it can be somebody else, again, from WCCC. But it needs to be an elected official, my understanding. We couldn't have a staff member being a voting member of Impact. So we need to have an elected express some interest. And if you are interested in the position, want to know more about it, you can talk to either Steve Calloway or myself, or Mayor Beatty, or whoever the representative are for those cities, and find out what it looks like, what that position entails. But since I'm calling it quits, I just thought I would let you know. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. You gonna take that one back to Hillsborough for us, Rick? Thank you. Commissioner Fye.
I was actually going to ask the staff to clarify. My understanding for Impact is smaller cities, not large cities. So Kristen, Stephen, could you weigh in?
Both. There's a large city rep, and then there's a small city rep, and then there's a county rep.
Yeah, and I think personally, I'd like to spend some time reviewing the impact bylaws and just make sure that we're up on the process.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you flagging that for us, Mayor Truax.
And that's kind of the way we've kind of done the Jpect one too, is we've usually done, you know, one of the larger cities and then one of the smaller cities for Jpect to kind of, which has basically been me and Beaverton or Hillsborough for the last 18 years doing it. So anything else for the good? Commissioner Fye, that gets you the answer you're looking for? Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? I think we're actually going to end early.
Amazing.
Chris, Stephen, good job on the agenda timing there. You got it. You nailed it this month. Thank you.
Yeah, got it. All right. Thank you all. We appreciate your time.
Thank
Okay,
you.
everybody, be safe. See you at the next meeting somewhere.